So, hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here in Windsor, Ontario, and it's looking like it's going to get warm tomorrow, so that's nice, and yeah, just thought to record a short video for the internet, and so thought maybe could do a little bit of meditation to start off, so thought could maybe just look about 3 feet in front and close our eyes and can focus in on our breath. So can watch the breath as it comes in and out from the tip of the nose. Knowing when the breath is coming in and knowing when it's going out. If we breathe in a long breath, can just know I'm breathing in a long breath. And if we breathe in a short breath, can just know I'm breathing in a short breath. And can try to be aware of the breathing process as the breath enters in through the nose, all the way through the in-breath, as the in-breath turns to the out-breath, all the way through the out-breath, and as the out-breath turns back to the in-breath again. Trying to keep awareness as continuous as possible. And if thoughts run off to past or future, can just bring them back to the present moment, to the breath. And before we finish meditating, can spread thoughts of goodwill, wishing may all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. may they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can make our minds infinite, can make them unbounded, all the way to the ends of the universe and beyond, in every dimension. May all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. And can open our eyes and do a short reflection on the Dhamma. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Saṅghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Saṅghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Saṅghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. So, hello everybody. Hope that everybody is doing well, wherever it might be in the world. And as mentioned, just here in Windsor, Ontario, briefly for a few days. And actually just recently was talking to some Buddhists that know, and they asked a very good question. So thought to maybe do a little Dhamma discussion video on that question. And so the question they asked was whether or not smoking was against the 5 precepts. And in the West, is kind of smoking is considered a really bad habit. It's kind of very addictive. It's something very difficult to quit. Kind of hard to quit and very bad for health. And so the 5th precept is against taking drugs, taking intoxicants. Basically, taking it. Sura is called Sura Meraya. Sura is called, anyway, there's a precept about Sura Meraya. Sura Meraya Majja Pamada Tana is what it's Veramani. And so Sura Meraya basically means like fermented and distilled liquors. But it gets expanded as well to kind of like recreational drugs, things like marijuana or like morphine. All these various kind of like strong mind-altering drugs that people take. And so the question was, would cigarettes kind of come under this 5th precept? And so interestingly enough, so kind of the what they call Vinaya experts. Vinaya are the monastic rules. And basically I've never heard of a Vinaya expert who categorizes cigarettes under the 5th precept. And one of the reasons is that although they're kind of addictive, they don't have maybe the same strength of intoxicating quality that like liquor does, or like marijuana does, where it's like a significant mind-altering substance that basically makes one quite heedless. And so, it's kind of one of these things where the rules, like the kind of rules that the Buddha sets out, they cover kind of like very broad brushstrokes. So, don't take intoxicants, basically, this 5th precept. But then the question becomes, where does the line get drawn? Because, cigarettes, I think people smoke cigarettes and they get like a little lightheaded or something, or they might find it relaxing. But doesn't seem to have the same power, and yet they are, very addictive. Kind of this like terribly addictive substance, maybe more addictive than alcohol. And of course, Buddhism is, aimed at ending suffering by ending craving. So, seems like they should be there. But this brings up a kind of an important point about the way that the Buddha laid out his teaching, which is that he laid out a series of rules, which he called the Vinaya. And, the 5 precepts are kind of Vinaya for lay people. Vinaya usually refers to monks' rules. But he also laid what's called the Dhamma. It's kind of these teachings about what you should do, what you should avoid, how you should practice. And one of the reasons for this is because, the number of things that a person can get addicted to, the number of bad behavior, amounts of bad behavior a person can engage in, they're so numerous that to try to lay out rules for every single situation, every single anomaly, every single gray area would just be a task that would be probably A, not that useful, and B, just immensely time consuming, too difficult to consult. So what we have is the Buddha laying out rules and kind of very broad brushstrokes. Okay, don't kill for lay people, don't lie, don't steal. One should be faithful. A person should be faithful in a person. Basically, that one is about being faithful in one's relationships, and also one to avoid kind of that type of contact with minors, people who are in religion, these kind of things. And not stealing and not taking intoxicants. These are all kind of very broad brushstrokes. But within these kind of broad brushstrokes, people can actually do a lot. The first precept is against killing, but there's no precept against harming, really. So, although you don't kill, a person could go around, causing a lot of harm to various, animals or people, and still not break that precept. So because of this, we have these kind of injunctions that are clear. Okay, don't do this. And this pushes a person's life in a certain direction. But it also needs to be coupled with the injunctions on what to do, how to push oneself further. So this is the kind of Dhamma, So although we have injunctions, kind of 5 precepts, don't kill, there are injunctions about not harming, don't harm. So when one wants to practice, one learns to take these things further oneself. So not only does one not kill, one also doesn't go around smashing smashing, ants' legs, or, whatever kind of, cruel things a person might do. But one of the reasons the Buddha perhaps laid things out in this way is because there are a lot of gray areas that arise. For example, although one shouldn't harm, although one shouldn't kill, what does one do if one is in a situation where a person kind of comes to attack? So, obviously you have to have the intention to escape. How much should a person have the intention to harm in that situation, for the purpose of escaping, for the purpose of self-defense? Obviously can't cross the line into trying to kill, but to what degree should that be something relevant? And then, of course, one shouldn't harm, but then even just walking up and down, one causes harm. To what degree should one be careful? Okay, there's ants around, there's various things around. How much should one slow down? Should one, take, a step every crack and then look down? Every single pavement stone might be hard to get to where you're going. So this is why there's these kind of gray areas where one has to develop a skill. One has to develop a kind of intuition around these things. And so this one against intoxicants, this 5th rule against intoxicants, most of the Vinaya experts that I've ever heard of will limit it to these kind of strong recreational type intoxicants, things like alcohol, marijuana, whatever. And the interesting thing is there are many things that people can chew and consume that are intoxicating. It's not just, things that one can take, smoking, but for example, ice cream can be intoxicating. A person eats a lot of sugar, they get a head rush. So should that come under or not? Right? So it doesn't come under the 5th precept, but the question of whether or not it's skillful to do is a totally different thing. Kind of, you go to somebody's house and they serve you some ice cream, maybe that's a situation where, no big deal. But if one finds oneself getting addicted to ice cream, just craving it, wanting to eat it all the time, and one's health is declining, okay, that's gone in a direction where it's not skillful. So this thing about cigarettes is another one, because although it's pretty clear this is mostly unskillful, it's one of these things that falls into an area that isn't covered by the precepts. And so it's not covered by the Vinaya portion, but it's covered by the Dhamma. So it's pretty clearly something that basically doesn't do much for anybody's health. Kind of it's basically just like an addictive habit that doesn't help at all. And so if one is practicing, Buddhism, one's practicing meditation is probably something that's better to avoid, but it's also something one couldn't say, okay, this is against the precepts. Interestingly enough, in the forest tradition in Thailand, in the earliest 20th century, there was a lot of monks who smoked. Kind of at that time when it first came out, there was this kind of idea that smoking cigarettes was healthy, and so like a lot of people smoked, and all the kind of very great monks smoked as well, and kind of in Thailand at that time. And so it wasn't considered something that was breaking the precepts. But later on, as people got to know what it was about, kind of a lot of monasteries started to ban the use of cigarettes, basically because they saw this was something that wasn't really good for health, and basically caused a lot of harm. But again, fell into a gray area. And so this is one of the lessons that we can learn from the Buddha's teachings when we come to study the discipline side of his teachings. Oftentimes in talks we'll talk about the Dhamma side, the kind of injunctions that one should do, how one should behave, the path of practice that the Buddha laid out. But there's also this whole other part about things that one shouldn't do. And when one comes to study these things that one shouldn't do, it's good to understand that both, even studying the Dhamma, both the things one shouldn't do and the things one should do have to come together. These kind of things both have to come together to give one a sense of the appropriate way to maneuver in a given situation. Because the way that life works is it presents people with so many situations that are gray. It doesn't clearly fall into something that one shouldn't do, doesn't, not sure how to apply the principles of what the Buddha said should do. And this is why practitioners, people who come to practice meditation, practice the Buddha's teachings, have to develop a skill. That's why it's called a wisdom. It's more of a wisdom tradition, something that one learns to develop a skill in applying these teachings and learns to come to know the results for themselves. And as for this, for this reason, the Buddha kind of lays things out this way, both a Dhamma and a Vinaya. Because there's so many situations that one can get in, these provide the appropriate guidelines for one to make one's own choices individually. That's why his name for his religion wasn't Buddhism, it was Dhamma-Vinaya. And before he passed away, he refused to appoint a successor. He said, when I'm gone, don't think you don't have a leader. This Dhamma and Vinaya that I've laid out for you will be your leader when I'm gone. And so consulting this, if we find something that doesn't necessarily fit into clearly, it's like smoking. It's not, it's not against the precepts, but it's also not really something we should do. This is where we apply wisdom in our practice. Is this a habit that would be beneficial for me to take on? I'm going to, if it's something that's not beneficial, it's harmful to oneself, harmful to others, then something not to do. Kind of considering that. Will this benefit me in the short term? Will it benefit me in the long term? Will this be helpful for my practice? And then one learns to avoid this kind of behavior, even if it isn't specifically banned, even if it isn't specifically mentioned. And so in this way, the Buddha's teachings are something that's applicable throughout the ages, because the number of things that a person's mind can latch onto and crave is just endless. Actually, walking in the downtown path, I saw these kind of, they don't advertise cigarettes, but they have these kind of like e-cigarettes, kind of vape, kind of this, there's a whole, the whole kind of, much of the terminal downtown Union Station was covered with posters about this vape e-cigarette. And so e-cigarettes are also not mentioned in the precepts, also not mentioned in the Buddha's teachings. And so one learns to take the principles in both these things, if it's a gray area, and use one's own wisdom to try to navigate a course, try to find a way to behave that's in line with the Dhamma. And that will help one avoid bad habits, cultivate good habits, and find happiness in one's life. So though smoking cigarettes, again, not against the precepts, it's probably, something not to do. But glad that this question was asked, because it's a very good one, and touches on an important point, that both these aspects, both the Dhamma that the Buddha laid down, his teachings on what to do, and the Vinaya, his teachings, in general, his teachings on what to do, and the Vinaya, in general, his teachings on what not to do, have to come together to provide a path of practice so that people can gain in wholesome qualities, decrease in unwholesome ones, and learn to purify their mind for a happiness that the Buddha aimed at, for Nibbana. Okay, so leave that for reflection, and hope everybody has a great day, and wish you all the best.